We kick off our brand new year of Money Monday, sponsored by Farmers State Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, making his return to Everyday Iowa, Mr. Chet Fesler. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good.
What's been keeping you busy?
A lot of stuff. We've had people, unfortunately, passing away, so that's been keeping us busy. So we've had to get rid of some of their stuff for them and take care of their beneficiaries and things like that.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, estate planning. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty, for somebody who might not be familiar, give me the 50,000-foot view. What is an estate?
An estate is the process in which you get rid of your stuff, basically. Okay. So when you pass away, you're going to have the cars, the house, the grandfather clock in the living room, the pictures of Aunt Abel, like Christmas, things like that. So you're going to try and get rid of all that stuff, and an executor will help do that. You can assign beneficiaries, so that can kind of speed up the process. You can get rid of your checking accounts through beneficiaries. You can do your 401ks, IRAs, things like that. Where we kind of jump in is those tangible property that don't really have an assigned beneficiary, so a house. And then we get all the stuff filed for you. Okay. There's what we call an inventory that needs to go to the courts to tell them what you've got. And then the attorney helps with that too, so we kind of orchestrate all that for you. What
happens, and we're going to look at kind of some video, people doing some planning, if you don't, Chad, have something in place?
Well, the state has a plan in place for you, and they may give your assets to somebody that you don't want to have it. So let's say you want a friend or a charity to get those assets, you want to have something in place to direct those assets for you.
Now, when you're talking about the estate planning, you'll often hear will or you'll hear a trust. Do these things all lump together?
Yeah, they're the instruments that help get your stuff where you want it to go. So will can, I always look at it as a shorter expiration date, if you will, than a trust. It's got to be done within 18 months or the courts get angry with you. So you want that done. And then a trust you can kind of prolong. You can establish you can have income for beneficiaries and things like that. So.
Gotcha. Now, somebody's married and they don't have an estate. It's just, we're married and she gets what, if I pass away or if he passes away, does that hold in a court of law?
Typically, because you'll see a lot of property is joint. So it'll go by the way it's titled. So if usually like myself, I'm married and my wife and I share the house together, so I pass, it goes to my wife. So depending, here in Iowa, we don't have community property, so it typically goes the way that the property's titled.
Okay, now we're talking about what's in it. Let's talk about getting to this point. Where do you start and how do you start?
Great question. So you could come in, you could talk to us. One thing, people will say, hey, can you write my will? Well, no, you don't want us, A, you don't want us to write your will, and B, we won't do it. So we'll give you a list of attorneys that you can kind of vet and you can meet with. We'll kind of get you started. We'll have that conversation, see what's important to you, and then we can bounce some ideas off of you, and then you got a pretty good track to run on to go to talk to an attorney.
There's an executor of an estate. There's a trust officer. Are these one and the same? Can they be one and the same?
Yes, we can't be one and the same. So we'll have folks that have kids scattered all over the country. My son lives in California. My daughter lives in New York. We want somebody in Iowa. Can FSB or Farmers State Bank act on our behalf as the executor? Yes, we can. A corporate executor is what we can. So you would name us in the document.
Okay.
Then we would go to bat for you.
Time for the 120-second lightning round. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. Biggest mistakes people make when it comes to this stuff?
Great. Well, we kicked it off. We talked about the personal property stuff. That's been a thorn in our side where there's no list. So people say, hey, Dad gave this to me. Then they get in a big fight, and then we got to figure out how to get this stuff to people. So I would say put a list together and assign what you want to go where to who. And then make sure it's with the will or it's signed or in your own handwriting, so it's not being contested by anybody.
I was going to say, to that will point, let's say they wrote it down, but does it have to be notarized? Does a lawyer have to see it? How does that work?
We had one where the person just hand wrote it and signed it, and it seemed that it was sufficient. I would say it can be, but I don't think it has to be.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Gotcha. And then final question is, and we got about just under a minute left, people want to start this conversation. What do they need to know? What do they come to you with to help this whole process move along?
I think just having something in the back of your mind where what you want to have happen. A lot of people start with the will versus the trust conversation. Do I need a will or a trust? We'll kind of walk through that, see what the complexity of their situation is, what the estate looks like. You can bring statements in, or if you want to just kind of talk through generalities, we can do that as well.
Okay. Gotcha. And how can people get a hold of you?
My FSB online. We just redid our website. We have a new wealth page that you can actually request a consultation through.
Perfect. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah.
Thanks for making time. Bundle up before you head back out there, all right? Stick around.